Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to the show. My name is Joseph Pisani, and today is Friday, so you know what that means. It's the Mevo Audio Show. So, first, I want to welcome everyone who's watching. Thank you. If you have questions, comments, or if you want to just chat audio with me, please post them in the chat on the Facebook group or on our YouTube page. So, happy Friday, everybody. And let's talk about what we're doing today. So, today we're going to be going over the different options for the Mevo Start, which is this device here, and how you can use audio with this Mevo. But before we get into that, I want to let you guys know we do these shows 4 days a week. We actually have Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. On Tuesdays, it's Ask Mevo Anything with Joe Capehart, and he does a Q&A with all of the customer groups and stuff like that. And he also throws in tidbits and networking suggestions or just things that we see along in our tickets that people are running into. He kind of addresses those there. We also have a great Wednesday show, which is the multicam beta group show. That's hosted by Will, and Will goes over all of the new things going on in our multicam beta app. If you haven't checked that out, you can check it out on Facebook. It's Mevo Multicam Beta Group. You can search there. And I'm sure one of our technicians can put something in the comments for you there for a link. Great show. Will goes over some of the things that are out and about right now. That app is out for early release. But he also goes and shows you some things that maybe aren't out to the public yet, or maybe some things that we're working on or trying out, just to see, based off of your feedback, what people are looking for. On Thursdays, usually Joe and Will do a show together where it's another Ask Mevo Anything. And on that show, they kind of go over everything in and out Mevo. They have a huge question and answer section there. And people go in, ask tons of questions, and get answers live on the show on Thursdays. And if you caught it yesterday, Joe actually he actually put on a pretty good masterclass of how to deal with a technical issue while doing a show live. Like, obviously, if we're talking streaming, things can happen. So if you watch that show back, he covered himself well on that. It was pretty impressive. So that's awesome to see in here. And today we have the audio show with me. So what we're going to do today is talk a little bit about our setup. So let's go into that. But before I do, I want to give you guys a little heads up on some things we have going on in Mevo. Check this out. Excuse me. So if you are a Mevo customer and you're looking to spread the Mevo love around, you have some friends that have checked it out, might be interested in picking up one of their own, you can absolutely do that. If you go to mevo.com/referral or mevo.com/refer, you can actually save your friends or family 5% on their purchase, and you can also earn a 5% commission back. So if you're someone who's involved in these groups, who's involved in the Mevo world, definitely sign up for this, get your own code and start spreading it around and earn a little back on your end. Great. Now that we got that out of the way, let's talk a little bit about the setup we're using today. So I am using Mevo Starts today. So I have a Mevo Start directly in front of me, and that's the camera I'm speaking to. I also have another camera set up here. So this is my audio mixer. So we'll be talking about this a little bit later and how to route audio through it. So it's a 2-camera setup, and if you notice the transitions I'm using a program called Streamlabs OBS. And in this program, you can do things like graphics, for example, my lower third. And the mic you're hearing right now is actually the Blue Yeti microphone that's coming USB to the back of the Mevo Start. So what I'm doing here with this microphone is I'm going from the micro USB connection on the bottom of the microphone. It's going to a USB-A to USB-C adapter, and then that's going right into the back. If you see over here on the Mevo Start, see if I can get you a look, right above the memory card right there, there's a USB-C input. Now, if you're using a USB-C microphone, you can absolutely use that input if your system is driverless. So for example, the Blue Yeti Nano is the microphone I'm using right now. And this microphone is driverless, so it plugs directly in. So important to note, since we're talking about it, if you are using some type of USB microphone, keep in mind that this microphone actually needs power. So if you look on the front here, hopefully this doesn't jumble too much. There's a green light right there. That's actually being powered from the Mevo Start. So if you are using this type of connection, you want to double check and make sure that your Mevo Start is fully charged, has plenty of battery on it. and that it's enough battery to power the mic and power itself. So that's important to know. We also have a couple of different mics set up here. I have the SM7B, which I'm going to show you how to connect this through a mixer. And then I also have this Rode NT1 condenser mic, which I can connect through a mixer too. And what I'm going to do with those is I'm going to show you the differences of the quality of sound and what their really use cases are and how they compare to something like a USB input, versus an analog input. But if you do have questions, post them in the chat. It looks like we have some popping up right now. So let's take a look. So Tim says, question. I have my external mic connected directly to the back of the Mevo through the lightning port. Is there any way to hook up my audio through my iPad, like I do with my iPhones, using Switcher Studios, but using the Mevo app? Yes. Okay, so there's a couple of things you can do here, Tim. So if you're going through, let's look at it again, see what your signal path is. So you have an external mic. It would help for me to know what mic you're using, but if that's plugging directly into the lightning port, so I'm assuming you're using some type of iRig, or if you're using just that lightning to 3.5 adapter, is there any way to hook up my audio through the iPad like I do with my iPhones using Switcher Studio? So, well, there's a couple of different things. Let's show you the mixer here. Hold on one second. And let me just bounce over to this, get this going. All right, cool. So what you can see on the screen here, this is our audio mixer. And what you're noticing is there's two options here. There's the internal microphone options, which are muted right now. We're going to get into those. Then there's the USB audio. But if I go to my edit inputs, I do have an option to use this tablet. So if I go here, let me monitor myself a little bit. Okay. All right. And so what we're hearing now is the audio coming directly through my tablet, which is over here to my left. So yes, you can send audio from the tablet or phone or whatever you're using, iPad, directly to the Mevo. I can also, this particular tablet I'm using you can't see it right now. It's a Galaxy 7 tablet. It actually doesn't have an audio jack out. So with something like the iPad or something like that, with that iRig adapter or with that, the lightning adapter, you would plug it through there and you can actually send input to the tablet that way. So if you have like a mixer and you want to come through the phone, you can absolutely do that using this setting. Hopefully I didn't fumble through that too much. So we're going to go back to the blue and we're going to handle some more questions. What do we have here? And if Will, you're watching, can you make these a little bigger? Cool. Saramonic. Okay. If you're using the saramonic mic, what I want you to do is double check on the input that's going into the Mevo, if you're going direct into the Mevo. If you're using a jack, let's go back to me. And yeah, we're on the blue. So if that saramonic jack has an input like this, I'm going to see if I can get this. Okay. This is a TRRS input. So if that's the way you're going from the phone to the back of the Mevo, that won't work. It will not work because the Mevo only takes in a TRS input, which is going to be like a stereo cable, something like that. Hard to see. Let me see if I can get you a better view here. Let's see if this works a little better. Yeah, it's a little better. You notice that this cable is a stereo 3.5 millimeter cable. It's or sometimes considered an 1/8 inch, but it only has 2 rings. Where if you're using a cable like this, which is common on those adapters, it's not going to work because this is looking for basically a cell phone input, and that 3rd ring is an extra channel for the microphone. But since the Mevo doesn't have a mic out or a line out, it's not going to use that channel, and therefore it won't work. It won't translate. Cool. Sam asks, will the Mevo Start allow you to change your sites that you are streaming to? If so, what's the best way to do this? Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So if you go into your, let's take a look at it. So if you go into your Mevo, nope, not that one. And we go into our settings here. Let me crop myself out there. And if I click on, so what I did is I clicked, I'll go back just so you see. I'm going to click on the bottom left red button that says NDI. So if you go there, here you have your options for your websites where you can stream to. So you could do Facebook, Twitter, Periscope, LinkedIn now, Twitch, YouTube. But you can also go RTMP and you can also use Vimeo. So if you have a Vimeo plan, you can use a multi-destination feature, which is you see on the top right over here. and that'll allow you to stream to multiple versions of these platforms simultaneously. But you can absolutely pick and choose where you want to go. If you have a specific site that uses RTMP, you can do that manually through the RTMP setting as well. Cool. Let's head back to our audio mixer. All right. Judah says, will the Mevo allow us to use our Mevo Cam as a webcam in 4K anytime soon? Okay. That's a great question, Judah. Thank you for that. And not really, not yet, because the Mevo webcam uses UVC mode, which is a 720p output. And to be honest, if you're using, if you're using webcam conferencing software, so if you're using things like Zoom, Google Meets, you're going to run into their limit is 720 anyway. So even if you had a 4K feed, they're not gonna put out 4K at all. So as it stands right now, the webcam mode is limited to 720. However, if you do want to get the 1080 quality like how we're doing today, you can use a system like OBS. You can use NDI. So there's a number of different ways you can connect. And that's a great question for Joe on Tuesdays and Thursdays, because he can get a little bit more in depth as far as how that works with your network and how it works with streaming and speed and all that kind of things. All right, Victor says, can you use something like a hub to connect the mic and also power the Mevo, not the mic? Okay. Victor, this is a wonderful question, and actually I am in the process of testing this. I currently use this hub right here, so hopefully this doesn't, I don't know if you guys can see it. It's a little short, but this is an Anchor. Doesn't get you. It's kind of short. I can't unplug it right now, but it's a USB-A 3-prong Anchor hub. It doesn't work. However, I did talk to some people in the tickets recently, and there was an Anchor hub that a gentleman said did work that way. I haven't tested it yet, and it's on my list of things to do. I have to get the hub and really do a test on that. So I will get back to you on Victor. That's a great question. I'm actually looking for that same solution, because for those who don't know what we're talking about, what Victor is asking is he wants to be able to use a mic like the the Blue Yeti, right? He wants to have a a USB connection directly to the Mevo, but he doesn't want to have to worry about the Mevo powering the microphone, right? So he doesn't want to worry about killing his battery or anything like that. I have heard that there is a hub that will allow this. I have not tested it yet, but it's definitely on my list. So Victor, remind me if I don't catch up with you next week on that. Remind me, and I will. But this is definitely something that's on my plate for sure. All right. What type of lights are you using to light your face as well as your background? Oh, okay. Thanks, Dustin. So yeah, so let's talk about the setup a little bit. So right now I have a ring light, which is, this one's probably about an 8-inch ring light. And I also have some, just like a big kind of like softbox light, just kind of spreading light around the room itself. And then behind me, it looks cool, but it's really kind of simple. It's just a couple of Hue light bulbs on some lamps that are hiding behind some things. So behind the guitar cabinet there's just one kind of just giving me some accents. And also, this is a great question because when you're doing videos, the Mevo loves light, and you want to make sure that you get the best possible quality you can. If you're in a darker environment, things can look grainy. And it's also good to mention here, when we do these shows, we do spend a fair amount of time looking at our settings. So, I know this is an audio show, and we'll stick to audio, but it's worth talking about. If you're in your adjustment settings here, I can change everything. You can change your contrast, your brightness, your saturation, your exposure. So where I find the two main settings that I find myself using all the time are the exposure and the saturation, right? So saturation is going to be as like how saturated your image is with color, and the exposure obviously is going to be how it's reflecting light through. So right now my exposure, you guys can see here, I'm at a -1.1, but my saturation is at a 1.3. So, there's definitely a correlation there as well. So, with this kind of stuff, with the lighting and the image quality, you really want to mess around and just, dial in some settings. I will say that the image adjustment settings on the Mevo 2.0 app are amazing. They're subtle, which is great. So it's not like you're going from 1 to 2 and this is just crazy difference. Like you can gradually find your sweet spot for your lighting setup. So thank you for that question there. All right. What else we got? Kobe. How do I get 2 or more frames to show to navigate between? Not sure what you mean by that. Are you talking about like a picture in picture, or are you talking about how like what I'm doing here, which is going back and forth like this with the like the mixer and the side frame? This is all done in OBS, so this isn't something I'm doing inside the Mevo 2.0 app. But if you watch Joe's show on Thursdays, he does use the Mevo 2.0 graphics and uses a single camera, and he has all kinds of graphics popping up on his shoulder, over the shoulder graphics. He has his lower thirds, the countdowns. So there are ways to do it with just the app where you don't need a computer, but maybe expand on that a little bit. All right, cool. So Ricardo says, I have a Mevo Start and I ordered 3 more Mevo Starts. Awesome. Fantastic. When can we use more than 3 Mevo, or how can I use 4 Mevo Starts at the same time? Wow, it's a good question. So, this is a multicam question. So if you're using the multicam app, which you can get in the App Store or the Google Play Store right now, it's out for early access. But Ricardo, yeah, right now the multicam app is limited to 3. But if you are doing a setup a little bit more elaborately, like how I have here with my computer, you can absolutely use OBS. You can hook up as many Mevos as you want, really. And you can do all your switching from there. There is that extra setup step, right? So you have to incorporate using the NDI tools. You have to, create your scenes and create your sources and stuff like that. You might even want to get yourself something like this. This is brand new to the setup here. This is a Stream Deck, and this is great. So this is where I can just kind of hit a button and do my switching, which makes my life a lot easier. As you guys may or may not know, we are doing these shows from home now, right? So obviously with the pandemic, we got to be as safe as possible. We want to make sure we can show you guys how you can manage this kind of stuff. Fires and whistles here with my toys, but this is kind of giving you an idea of what is capable with the Mevo. All right, Samu says, what is the best way to increase your live sound if it's too low? Okay. You know what? That's a great question, Sam, and we're going to get into that right now. So if you notice, if I go into my app, now my Blue Yeti microphone, if you look at where it says USB audio and you have my fader there, it's about halfway down. So I'm at about let's say the middle is 100% or 0. But let's say it's 100%, so I'm 50% from the bottom. So you can adjust your levels, your input levels in the app itself, and you can also adjust your output levels. So if your input levels, your input levels are the gray shaders, the white ones. So this one I'm moving now, which let me just make sure I'm monitoring myself here. So I should be getting loud, probably peaking a little bit right now. Check, 1, 2. But if I scale it back a bit, this is a more comfortable volume for me. Hopefully it's comfortable for you guys. But you can absolutely change your input volume. Now, if you look at the top, the black bar, okay, that's the output volume. So that's controlling the overall output of everything that's going to your stream. So whether you have like a setup with a mixer and you have a bunch of different mics going in, if you have a bunch of different sources running, the output is going to control all of that. Think of that as like your master fader, right? That's what's going out to your audience. But the input faders are what's going to adjust your level pre-output fader, if that makes sense. So this way, if you have multiple sources, you can get a nice little mix going and then send that to the out. So hopefully that answers your question. Ray says, I want to use Rode Go-To microphones. Have you used it yet? Well, Ray, you are in luck because I have 2 goes right here. So let's talk about it. I love these things. I think these are great. I think they're for the affordability of it. They're a little bit more of a higher end. Well, they're like a prosumer product, but they work great. And I never had a problem with them. So yeah, these are the Rodes right here. These are the Goes. And for those of you that don't know what these are, I'll kind of break them down a bit. So this is the transmitter module. And this one actually has a built-in mic input on the top, but you can also put in an additional lavalier mic and connect it through here. Okay. Now the way this works is this would be on your person, somewhere over here. Let's say we'll call it that, and then the receiving unit, you can now go directly from the output here. This is it. Let's see if we can get a better angle. There you go. So that's an 1/8 inch or 3.5 millimeter, depending on how old you are. When I came up in audio, these were called 1/8 inches. But you would take just the output from here, just using a regular stereo cable, and you can have that come directly into your mixer or your Mevo, either way, from the other end, like something like this. And then inside your Mevo app, you can then adjust your audio settings. So we can play with that in a little bit, but that takes a little setting up of me moving the camera around and stuff like that. But it's awesome, and it's a great device, and I definitely recommend them if you're looking at it for sure. No, I'm looking for the other receivers right here. Cool, great question. All right, let's keep it going. All right, this is a question concerning audio. Good, you're in the right place. Is it possible to have the VU meter in grid view, like to monitor the audio signal from the grid view? I don't know. I don't think so. So if we're going into our grid view, let's go to our mixer here. So what he's talking about is this view here. So this is a view if you're creating static shots and you want to kind of move around. So I'll just bump a couple in here. We'll add one there. Stick that guy in the corner. I'll add one over here. Stick this guy over here. All right, and then we'll go to my grid view. So if you're looking at, my full screen right now, I can bounce around these shots on the app. I'll show you what it looks like in the app. So with the question, I didn't see the name, sorry, but the question that was asked is, could we get VU meters here? Which you can't, but I think it's a great idea, and I think it's a great suggestion. So it's definitely something that I can send up to our software team and see if that's something that interests them. And I think that would be super helpful. And the reason why he's asking that is because if you are doing like a multiple shot, if you only have one Mevo, you want to do multiple shots. If you're doing an interview, instead of having to switch back and forth to check your VU meters, it would be nice to have right there. I think that's a great suggestion. So thank you for that. All right. Looks like we have more questions coming in here. And it says, thanks, Will. Mike says, how do I set up the grid different camera shots using Mevo Start in the app? Oh, well, I kind of just showed you, but I'll do it again. So basically what we're going to do is if we pop in our app here and we go into, let's get out of that. So if you look on the bottom right-hand side, there's the 6 dots, not the 3 dots, the 6 dots. That's going to show you your grid mode. Now, as you saw, to create your static shots, all you have to do is just hold down your finger on anywhere. Excuse me. So I'm going to hold it down by like this guitar over here. And if you notice from here, I can do a couple of different things. I can add a static shot, hitting the plus sign. I can cut to this static shot just using the scissor icon, or I can transition through the static shots themselves slowly or fast through the rabbit or the turtle. But for now, we're just going to add a static shot here. So now that's our static shot. We can change the zoom and effect of that if we want. Let's say I want to give you guys a really intimate look right here, and I'm going into grid mode. So I have this shot here. So if I go like that, I can be like, hey guys, how you doing? Or I can come back out to my wide. So this is a great way you can use multiple shots and multiple options just with one Mevo, which is really, this is like the core of the Mevo, right? Like this is the ability to get one camera in hand, have a bunch of different options as far as your shots and as far as your production. All right, cool. So let's get back into here. So, all right, that looks like it's it for questions right now. Great questions, guys. I really appreciate it. Keep them coming. Keep them coming. Keep me talking. It keeps me paid. So I appreciate it. So what we're looking at right now is we're going to get out of the blue microphone now. So like I said, what you've been hearing is the Blue Yeti. We're going to get away from that. And what I'm going to do is going to look at the internal microphone options from the Mevo Start. So if you're just getting the Mevo Start, you're just getting into it, you just opened the box and you want to just hit the ground running and start recording, this is what you're going to use. So notice I can mute it right inside the Mevo 2.0 app. Let's go ahead and mute the USB. All right. You should notice a huge difference in sound. So what you're hearing now is the general setting of the Mevo mic's built-in microphone. So just to give you guys an idea of what that is, we're not using blue anymore, we're using internal. And if you look on the top of the Mevo here, let's see if I can get you a nice angle here. And So what you're seeing there is the 3 microphones on top of the Mevo. Those work together in conjunction and run algorithms to do certain things. When you're in the app, on the general setting, it's kind of like your starting setting. This is picking up pretty much everything around. You'll notice that this is a lot more roomier than what you were hearing through the blue microphone. This is the best option if you have to mix both music and speech together, because it's just like an overall, I'm going to take in sound setting. Now, we also have the music setting. So in the music setting, it's going to sound a little different, okay? So you might notice I might sound a little bit more high-end. Let's see, if you start hearing static issues, what is the best way to fix this? Sam, I'm going to get to that question in just a second. So right now we're talking about the music setting. So this is meant to capture a wider range of frequencies. So that's why you notice that if I go back to my general setting, this setting is not going to have as much high-end sizzle as the music setting. And it's not going to have as much low-end bass either as the music setting, because the music setting is really meant to capture as much frequency response as possible. So for the music setting, picture this, like if you're recording a band and they're playing live, right? You want to be able to hear each individual instrument pretty clearly. You want to make sure you hear the kick drum. You want to make sure you hear those cymbals. You want to make sure you hear the singer and the guitars, bass, all that stuff. So what the music setting will do is it's designed to capture as much of the frequency spectrum as possible. Now, I'm going to switch over to the speech mode, and Sam, I'm going to get to your question in just a second because it kind of pertains to this as well. Now, when I switch over to the speech mode, notice how much more direct the signal sounds now that I'm switched over to speech mode. All right, so you're not hearing nearly as much of the room. It's a more direct signal. So the way that works is, I'm monitoring myself. The way that works is it uses the microphones on top of the Mevo, right here, and I'm going to get a little higher there. And what it's doing, it's judging, each microphone is judging when the sound is hitting it, where it's coming from. So, for example, the one microphone on the back, sound is going to hit that microphone before it hits the other ones. Because of that, we're able to run an algorithm that can phase cancel unwanted sound. So that allows the Mevo to have a more direct signal to what's in front of it and kind of block out what's happening behind it. This way you don't get any type of like unwanted signal or unwanted, reverb or anything, or room tone or anything like that. So if you are doing any type of fake frontwards camera, like setting, like how I'm doing today, and you don't have external microphones, use the speech setting. You're going to get a much more direct signal using that setting. Cool. All right. So it looks like we have a couple questions here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch back over to my blue. Okay. And I'm going to switch my monitoring on. Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2. Sounds good. All right. And you'll notice that I turned off the internal microphones in the app. The reason why I did that is because if you have them unmuted, these will run simultaneously. So like we were saying before, this is where you can mess around with your faders and kind of, do some fun stuff with the faders there. Cool. All right. So we're going to get into some more questions. Looks like we have some questions coming in. And again, we are on the blue right now. All right. So Sam, the question was, if you start hearing static sound in your live stream, what is the best way to fix this? Okay. Static sound could be a million things. You could be a bad ground on a cable. It could be interference coming from whether it be cellular data or your Wi-Fi or Wi-Fi signal interference or anything like that. If it's more of a crackling, where almost like it sounds like it's peaking or anything like that, could be your input settings. So it's really hard to tell where the static's coming from, but you want to, first thing to do is check your cables. The way to check those, you just replace them with a brand new cable, see if you still get the sound. Check and see how much interference is in the area. So if you're using a Wi-Fi router that has a lot of traffic on it, if you're in a public area where there's a lot of people using it, or there's a lot of cell phones around, you could get weird noises and weird interference sounds coming through. But if it's just a matter of like a hiss let's say you're just in a room that has like an air vent or something like that, we could talk about noise suppression. So let me pop my monitoring on right here, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So in OBS, I'm using a noise suppressor to kind of get rid of the hum and hiss from the room, and take a look at what it sounds like without it. Okay, so you may not notice this. It's not as bad with the blue. We could probably hear it better when I get to the mixer. But what noise suppression will do is, let's see if we can hear the hiss. Hiss is off. Hiss is back. Subtle. But that's a way you can do it. So if you're using external hardware, or if you're using internal hardware, get yourself a noise suppressor, and that should kind of get rid of any type of unwanted, tones that you're not looking for. Cool. Thank you for that question. All right. Mike says, what is the purpose of the scissors icon when setting a shot? And it seems that if you just press your finger on the canvas, you can cut automatically to that position. Yeah, I mean, you can. But let's check it out. Let's go into our app here. So if I get another, right, I can cut to that. I can click it that way. You're absolutely right. But you notice that the option with the scissors didn't save. So the scissors is if you want to cut to something that maybe you're not going to cut to again, So for example, let's say, I don't know, let's say there was just like a ghost over here or something, and I go to the scissors and I cut to it. I can cut to that scene, but I'm not setting up a static shot. You know what I mean? So that's just like a kind of like a one-off. Now the bunny and the turtle, what you do is the way it works is whatever's highlighted in blue is what the audience is seeing. Whatever's highlighted in yellow is an additional shot. If you want to transition to that shot, what you do is you hold down on the yellow side, and let's take the bunny over there, and you'll see that cruise right over. Now you can go into the Mevo settings and you can change your speeds for your transitions and stuff like that as well. Thank you for that question. And you know what? Let's make sure. Going to be go to your wide. So you're good there. Cool. All right. Well, big question. Here we go. So Butch says, I have trouble sometimes adding more than one shot. I'm using my phone. Once I get the shot set up and add it, I also have trouble adjusting, making it larger, feel smaller. I use an iPad for mini and scoring is video. Can you demonstrate adding a new shot when you already have two in place? I kind of just did. So yeah, there you go. You just got to be aware of what's happening. So again, real quick, as you can see on this screen here, I got 3 shots set up. They're random. But I know you can just click on them to get to them. So you can shot that way. You can go into your grid mode and you can go through your shots that way. And just make sure that they're locked. Just make sure that if you're adding a shot, you're using the plus sign, right? Now I have a shot here. And I add like a bunch of more shots. Let's see how many we can get. To be honest with you, I've never tested the limit, and it looks like the limit is 5, which is awesome. I mean, how many more shots could you need on a single screen like this? So hopefully that clears that up. Cool. Mike says, is the NDI feature reliable over Wi-Fi, or should you really be connected via the Ethernet cable? Wow, great question. Well, I'll tell you what. Right now, I have 2 Mevos running NDI completely wirelessly to a laptop that is completely wireless as well. How am I looking? How am I sounding? Sound good? Then there you go. You can absolutely do it. Now, there are a couple of factors here. We always recommend an Ethernet connection as the most stable connection. But if it's not an option, for example, like me today, I'm using one of my Mevos to power this microphone. So I can't plug power into that, right? So I'm using the power from the Mevo and a Wi-Fi connection. If that's your setup and that's what you need to do, you want to make sure that your upload speeds are up to par. So like the speeds at my house here, the service provider I have is kind of limited. So we kind of cap out around 39 megabytes per second upload speed. Generally, we want to say you need 10 megabytes per second or higher for like a good healthy stream where you're not going to be worrying about like frame drops or things like that. But So it really depends on your upload speeds. It depends on your network strength. Whether or not you're on a office network, a home network. There could be firewall issues. So once you start getting into the network, minutia of the things, there's a lot to look at. But for most people and in most general situations, if you have a Wi-Fi router hooked up and you're getting decent upload speeds out of it, you should have no problem connecting NDI to an OBS system or just streaming directly from the camera. One thing it's good to point out, and if you've been watching these shows, you probably noticed this a couple weeks ago. When you have NDI wired or wireless or something like that, you can run into syncing issues between the two. So if you are running a multiple camera setup, like I am today, what you really want to do is you want to have the main camera be the end all be all of where your audio goes. So if I were to switch over to my mixer, which is here, I would have to then physically change in the back of the Mevo. Physically change in the back of the Mevo and insert the 3.5 millimeter jack, which I'm actually about to do after this next question. So I'll show you what that looks like and what happens in the mixer when you do that. All right. Ricardo says, do you recommend adding a pan feature to maximize angle recordings in a multi-camera environment? Do you think it would make a difference because the mic's adding a pan feature? So I guess what you're referring to, correct me if I'm wrong, but what you're thinking of is because you have multiple mics on the camera itself, adding a pan feature left and right. It's not a bad idea. The issue that's with that is you are correct. The distance between these two mics aren't as drastic to really create a stereo image. So, for example, if you're recording a drum set, not these microphones, but I'll use this as an example. If you're recording a drum set, and when you guys might notice if you listen to music, generally you have the left half of the drum set on the left, the right half of the drum set on the right through your speakers. And the reason why that happens is because most people are literally recording them with two microphones hanging off the top. And, this is your left, this is your right, or whatever the case may be. You can even do XY patterns. Some people like that. There's a bunch of different methods to doing this. But that's also, a music setting where you have multiple sources and they're spread out over a stereo image. So like a guitar's over here, another guitar's over here. You're not really going to get that with the proximity of these microphones. They do understand that there's things on the left and there's things on the right. But as far as creating that stereo image, I think you need a little bit more space pair for that to happen. But it's not a bad sentiment. And if our software team can figure that out, I wouldn't doubt it. They're pretty incredible. So thank you for that suggestion. All right, cool. So thank you for all those questions, guys. I love it. It's been a really good conversation. What I'm going to do now, though, is I'm going to show you what happens when you plug your 3.5 millimeter jack into the back of the Mevo, and to show you how the settings. Keep an eye on this screen and where you see the audio processing settings, the general music speech, and we didn't even talk about wind. We can go back to wind. But right now I want to talk to you about how to use the 3.5 millimeter jack. So check this out. Cool. All right. So if you noticed, when I plugged the jack in, and again, that was a 3.5 stereo, which you can't see here. Stereo jack that's coming from this mixer right here. These are RCA outputs. This mixer is a Behringer Xenix 1202. This mixer is a little older, but it's very popular. Basically, I have a Y cable coming out from here. Red is right, white is left, and it's going to the stereo jack into the back of the Mevo. Now, what you're hearing from me right now is still the Blue Yeti. So as we go into our app, I'm going to show you what that looks like when we switch over. Okay. Let's do some monitoring. So now I probably should come in a little bit lower. I'm going to put my faders up here a little bit. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do here is generally when I monitor the audio, I'm coming through my computer. Okay. so I can hear what you guys hear. I'm going to change that up a bit. So I'm actually going to take my headphones out. And I'm going to come back into my mixer. So what I'm hearing now is myself coming through this mixer. And now I can hear what's happening with my microphones, what microphone I'm using, and where my adjustments are being made. Oh, looks like we have a question coming in. Let's get that answered before we move forward, because it's going to take a minute. All right. Samu says, is there any way of connecting a digital mixer to the Mevo through XLR cables, or I'm guessing you meant to write dongle, and how would you do this? Well, yeah. All right, let's talk about it. So essentially, I'm doing what your question is asking right now, Sam, but except I'm using an analog mixer. If you're using a digital mixer, it'll be the same way we just discussed in hooking up the microphone. So you'll be able to use the USB out from the mixer. Will go directly into the back of the Mevo Starts USB-C input, so you may need an adapter. But essentially, I'm doing the same thing right now. So what you're hearing right now is actually the SM7B microphone, which is right next to me. Right? This is actually running through this mixer, which is then sending the signal through the output here, which is the RCA outputs, directly into the Mevo, right into the back. And like I said earlier, notice that you no longer have the options for speech mode and music mode or wind mode or general mode, because when you're using the line input, it disables the internal microphones. So you can't use the internal microphones and a line input signal at the same time. However, you can use the line input with other input signals like the USB audio. All right. Cool. All right. So again, what you're hearing right now is the Shure SM7B coming through my mixer here. And I want to talk a little bit again about the noise suppression feature. So check this out. And let me monitor this from my computer as well. Okay, check. All right. Give myself some volume. So you should be hearing a fairly large amount of analog hiss coming through, which I could even crank. You hear that? That's terrible. Now, if you use something like a noise suppressor, with a click of a button, that's gone. Now, that's something that's inside OBS, but you can find this on certain digital mixers. You can find this on outboard gear or any other broadcasting software, whether it be Streamlabs OBS, regular OBS, or Live Studio. Definitely has a feature like this. So that's entirely up to you as far as how you want to use it or if it's available to you. But it's a great feature to kind of get rid of some of that unwanted hiss. So I'm going to go back to my mixer real quick as far as monitoring is concerned. Bam. All right, I'm in. And I'm going to give you an idea of what it sounds like with the different microphones. So again, this is the SM7B. This is to my left. And let me give you a better view of that. Okay, routed right through my mixer. But I also want to take a look at this microphone here. So if you look on the mixer, this channel where I'm pointing to on the bottom left is the SM7B. Now, if I bring that down and start bringing this channel up, okay, this is the Rode NT1A, which is a pretty affordable vocal microphone made by Rode, but you'll notice a big difference in the tone. Now, this particular microphone, you guys might not run into as much if you're doing like live shows and things like that, but if you are recording audio and you want to record audio to the Mevo, you can actually use this microphone through a mixer and into the Mevo. So with a microphone like this, this is a very delicate microphone. You'll notice that very crisp as far as like the tonality of it. So it's not as bass heavy as, let's say, the SM7B is, and that's by design. This is a much brighter microphone, and it's meant to be used in a certain way. So if you notice when I'm facing the camera here, you're picking up more of the room. You're not getting as much of my direct voice signal coming through. If I turn to my microphone, it's a big difference. So if you're using a microphone like this, you really kind of want to be, let's say, a Mevo away from the mic to get the best signal. And you also want this mic positioned in a certain way. If this mic is positioned under your nose, kind of how it is on me now, it'll sound more nasally and you'll get more air coming out of your nose when you're breathing, if you're speaking. So a good best practice on something like this is actually to move it up a little bit. So if you move it up just a tad, just a little bit above the nose, and that should take out some of the nasaliness sound of it. And then you can also do a little bit more if you're using a mixer. Hop into your mixer and mess around with your EQs, right? So you can, let's say I want to cut out some of the high end a little bit. Maybe I want to roll off some of the low end. So if you look on this mixer right here, this has a button, which is an 80 hertz roll off. So basically that's saying anything under 80 hertz is going to kind of roll off the spectrum there. And then I can adjust certain things through the EQ. So this is my high end EQ here. Let's just, let's take that down a bit. Bump some low end, bump some mid. Generally with EQ, you kind of want to do subtractive EQ. I mean, I could do a whole series on just EQing, but really, just play around and see what you get. So that sounds actually pretty decent to me. A little bit of low end, taking out some of the highs, sounds pretty nice. And let's say you want to throw in some type of effect. If you look at the red knobs on this mixer, they send to an effects chain. So if I pin this up a little bit, now you guys should be hearing some serious reverb. And I'm going to monitor that. Again, I've been listening through my mixer. I'm going to come back to what you're hearing. Okay. Check 1, check 2. And it turns out you're not hearing anything. Hold on. Or I'm not hearing anything. Auto mutes. There it is. Whoa. All right. So now you're starting to hear that reverb get cut off. That's because of the noise suppressor. It sounds crazy. I know. Here we go. Now you can really get the full effect of the reverb. So what just happened was that the noise suppressor I have inside OBS actually started affecting my effects chain unwantedly. So if that's the case, you shut that off. Cool. Let's slide over to the SM7B so you guys can hear the comparison. Check 1, 2. Check 1, check 2. Cool. So when I slide over to the SM7B, you'll notice it's a little bit more bass heavy. It doesn't have as much high-end sizzle as the condenser microphone. And in fact, even in something like this, if I go to my mixer with my SM7Bs, I actually kind of like to pull down my mids a tad and actually give it a little bit of high-end and give it a little bit of bass boost as well. And this generally sounds pretty good on the SM7Bs. Let me monitor this. Great. Now, if I'm not using effects, I can kick my noise suppressor back on and get rid of some of that hiss. Check. All right. So now you should be hearing a very talk radio podcast type of sound from my vocal. Whereas when I was on the condenser microphone, it was more of a brighter, more high-end sizzle type feel. All right. So I just want to make sure you guys got to hear the differences between those. So I'm going to pop right back over to my blue and we're going to answer some questions. Cool. Check 1, check 2. Beautiful. All right. All right. So Alfonso says, can you plug mic into the Mevo mic app? Yes. Great. You know what? It's like you guys are writing my show for me. So let's take a look at it. So let's see here. Where are you? All right. There he is. All right. So if I'm using the Mevo mic app, and let me just make sure I didn't mess anything up. Check 1, check 2. Beautiful. So if I go into the Mevo mic app here, so for those who don't know, the Mevo mic app is an app that you can download on a separate device and use that as a separate audio source for your Mevos. So this is actually a free application that you can download in the Play Store or in the App Store. Now you notice when I opened it up, it tells me what I'm using, right? So I'm using a Galaxy S9 Plus for this case. And it's also showing me that I have 2 Mevos detected. So I have the Mevo that's in front of me, and I also have the Mevo that was looking over the mixer. So what I want to do is I want to go to the Mevo that was in front of me. And the way I do that is it's in my app. And we're not talking 3.5 anymore. We're still in the blue here. And you go to edit inputs on the bottom. Great. And you'll notice right away, you see the S Plus Mevo mic popping up right there. So let's click it and check it out. Okay, I muted it, but I want to kind of go over it a little bit. So notice that this just adds basically another channel to your audio mixer. So think of it this way. These are channels, right? There's a channel. There's a channel. There's a channel. There's a channel. So essentially what adding this is doing is creating another channel for your mixer. All right, so let's go and take a look at how it sounds. All right, so what you're hearing now is me coming directly from the microphone of the Galaxy S9 Plus, and that's being sent through the remote app to my Mevo. So the question was, can we use other microphones with this? And the answer is yes, if I can find it. Oh, there he is. So I'll use this one as an example. This is it's a no-name microphone brand. It's a TRRS input, and I'm going to plug that into the phone. Let's see what it sounds like. All right, check 1 2. All right, so little staticky, probably because this isn't a very good microphone, but you can totally hear the difference, right? It's a more direct signal. It's using a bigger microphone capsule. It just sounds like kind of doo-doo because it's an old crappy mic. But if you have a good mic, or if you have something like the Rhodes, you can signal through a lob that way as well. Kind of redundant because you're already wireless, but you can. All right, that's the Mevo mic app. Let's go back to the Blue. Check 1 2. Great, here we go. And it looks like we have some more more questions coming in. So let's ask Sam. Is it better to use a condenser microphone or a dynamic microphone with the Mevo? Can you also use a crowd microphone at the same time? Great questions. Great questions. So, well, this is really based on application. All right. So this is the same question as like, what's your favorite microphone, right? It's just, it depends on what you're doing. If I'm doing any type of like podcast or a show like how we're using now, you're going to want to use a condenser microphone, mainly because they're just not going to pick up as much of the room as, I'm sorry, you're going to want to use a dynamic microphone, mainly because they're not going to pick up as much of the room as a condenser. Condensers are really meant for recording high quality audio in a very controlled space. So in a sound booth with sound proofing and everything like that, Oralex and basically all the panels, stuff like, you want to be in a quiet, dense area when you're using those types of microphones, for the most part. Dynamic microphones are a little bit more versatile. You can use them in more settings. For example, something like this microphone just has a nice big windscreen on it. I don't really need to worry so much about how the room sounds. I don't need to worry so much about adjusting my input signals as much or putting on compressors, things like that. It's a little bit more of a direct controlled signal. Now, there's a lot of different ways you can do that. Like, so just to give you an idea, a dynamic microphone is something like this. So this is the Shure SM57. I got a couple of them. The reason why I'm showing you this one and not the SM58 is because I don't have it. But the SM58 is essentially the same microphone that has that silver capsule that everyone's familiar with, right? That's like the main microphone anyone uses in pretty much any situation for years and years and years. That's a dynamic microphone. So that's a microphone that it doesn't have the components that a condenser has. It's not as delicate as a condenser. These SM57s are pretty hardy. So I've put, this is something that you can use on a drum set and have drummers literally beat it up with their sticks and it'll survive. So there's a difference there. So it really depends on your application. I'd say if you're using any type of talk show type setup, let's say, I would definitely use dynamic microphones. But if you are like recording a singer and you're in a booth and you have a type of sound studio setup or anything like that, you really want to capture great signal, or if you really just want to capture like a sound of a room, you could use a condenser microphone. I'll give you a small tidbit. Like, if you take a look at any of the old Beatles albums, a lot of the times they were recording their albums or recording their vocals in bathrooms, which is kind of weird to say, but those types of rooms and those environments create a certain aspect to the sound, right? A certain tone, a certain reverb, a certain feel. And if you want to capture that, you're probably better off capturing that with a condenser microphone. But general talk, talking podcast stuff, I would go with dynamic. All right. Mike says, how far back can the start be positioned and still get decent quality shots, say in the church? So great question, Mike. Thank you for that. Visually, 5 to 15 feet is really what you want to be. Anything further in that, you might lose quality trying to zoom in. It depends on your setup, obviously. It also depends on your lighting. If your lighting is great, maybe you can be a little bit further away because the camera can capture more data, or the sensor can see more light coming in. But I definitely wouldn't suggest it if you're doing like a church setting and you put the camera at the back, by the entrance of the church, and you have the pastor, priest, or whoever in front, and there's like a 60-foot run. I wouldn't recommend that because that'll probably force you to zoom in a little bit too much. So 5 to 15 feet, anywhere in that range, 10 feet. I think you're in good shape right now. The camera you're looking at is, I'd say, about 3 feet away from me. It's pretty close, but you can see like a big difference, just because this is where the lighting's hitting. If I were to go a little bit further back, the light, you can see right away the lighting changes just based off my position. So it's hard to say. If you're in a church, I'd say try and get as close as possible to your subjects. If you have multiple subjects, I would say use multiple Mevos and maybe try out the multicam app. Cool. Sam, does the Mevo Start come with a lighting system, or what lighting system would you recommend using? And does the Mevo Start have a built-in light meter that can adjust? No, it doesn't have any of those lighting options, though those are great ideas. It would be awesome to have some type of lighting meter. But with light, there's it's kind of just like audio, right? You can go in deep. Like you could, like when talking like adjusting your exposure or adjusting your white balance or anything like that, is the same conversation as adjusting an EQ. A certain white balance is like whatever your white balance is set for, it needs to be set for whatever color or whatever temperature the light coming in is. So I like to go with mostly daylight, which is I think 56K on the temperature scale, just because I feel like it does create a nice full, comfortable image. But you can change that depending on what your setup is. As far as recommendations, we use the ring lights, and I think we do have some lighting options coming down the line. Nothing I can really speak to right now, but there are some cool things out there that you can get. But if you're just trying to do an at-home setup, you can just get yourself a couple of boxes. Just pay attention to what temperatures you're using, and then if you go into your app, let me just do this here. If you go into your app and you go into your settings, let's mess around. So you can go in and change some of these things. So for example, I'm on auto white balance right now because I thought it looked pretty good. But if I say I change that to tungsten, right? Now, this looks crazy, right? And the reason why is because the white balance isn't trying to fight a tungsten lighting setup because I don't have tungsten lights coming in. Where if I change that to like daylight, you'll probably see it actually get a little bit warmer, right? So this is kind of adjusting as if I was in daylight, but it's not. A lot of people think daylight is yellow. It's actually not. Daylight is actually blue. Or, obviously light enthusiasts will break that down a little bit more, but general terms, daylight's blue. So this is trying to compensate for too much blue by adding or removing. So, it really doesn't matter because the has so many great options. And this is back to auto. This is just auto white balance setting, and I think this looks great. So, whatever light setup you're using, just adjust your camera to the light instead of trying to find the perfect light to go with the camera. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. All right, cool. So we talked a little bit about the differences in microphones, but I also want to show you this. So what this graph is showing you is something called a polar pattern. So different microphones can do different things as far as how they pick up sound. If you look on the top left, the omnidirectional polar pattern, I can actually give you an example of that. So if you look on the Blue Yeti Nano, let's see if I can actually just even have it right here. There you go. So if you have something like this, the Blue Yeti Nano, just because I don't feel like touching it, it actually offers you a omnidirectional pattern or a cardioid pattern, right? So you have that option. Not every mic has that, but the Blues do a great job of providing that. And what that's telling you is, if we go back to polar patterns, it's telling you when sound hits the capsule, what's happening? Like, how is it picking it up? So an omnidirectional polar pattern is picking up from everywhere. So that's picking up like basically from all different directions. Doesn't matter where you are. That's a great setting. That's similar to like the general setting on the Mevo Start's internal microphones, where it'll pick up pretty much everything. A bi-directional or figure eight pattern, which you can find on something like this. This is the bigger Blue microphone. So if you find something, let's see if I can get real close. That figure eight, and see, this one even has more options. But the figure eight pattern is kind of cool if you're doing a one-on-one interview or a one-on-one conversation, podcast, whatever it may be, and there's someone in front of you, there's someone behind you, or the mic, I should say. So what this will do is it'll pick up, subject A, subject B, and kind of phase cancel out what's happening on the left and right sides. So that would be a bi-directional polar pattern. Now, the polar pattern you're going to see most is going to be the one that's highlighted in blue here, which is a cardioid pattern. So what the cardioid pattern is doing is it's picking up what's in front of the microphone and not so much what's directly behind it. So that's how you get, like in that speech mode, for example, it's very similar to that. It's going to eliminate what's behind and reflections that are unwanted to give you a more direct voice or sound source to mic input signal. So that's the cardioid pattern. Now, if you're looking at, let's see if I can find my shotgun. He's around here somewhere. Oh, there he is. Now, if you're using something like a shotgun microphone, if you look on the bottom right there, you'll notice that's a much, 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 much more narrow pattern, right? So for something like this, so this is a very small shotgun microphone. These come quite large. I mean, you can get, they have many different uses depending on, your use case scenario. But something like this is going to have a polar pattern that's very narrow, because these are meant to be directed at a certain signal or at a source in order to pick it up. So if I were to, if I was doing if I didn't want any microphones here, I wanted something at a frame, something like this would probably hang, let's say about there, and it would be directed at my voice. And what it's not going to do, it's not going to pick up what's happening over here so much, and it's not going to pick up what's happening over here so much. So that's what a shotgun pattern does on the mic. So, be aware of what you're purchasing. Do the research if you're going to mess around with different microphones and different setups, because you want to know what the capabilities are. You don't want to pick up a shotgun and expect it to be omnidirectional. It's just not going to happen. So I hope you guys got some great information there. But before I go, I definitely want to make sure you guys know about the referral program. So please, if you are a Mevo customer and you are a Mevo fan, if you are a Mevonite, a Mevonian, a Mevoer, whatever you want to call yourself, you want to spread the Mevo love, tell your friends. So you can go to mevo.com/referral or refer, and you can get a 5% commission back on anything they purchase if they use your code. And they can also get 5% off whatever they purchase from mevo.com. So if you're watching this show, you're part of our team. There's no reason why you shouldn't be doing this, because I'm sure you're telling your friends already about the Mevo. So with that being said, guys, happy Friday. Have a great weekend. Please, if you have any other questions, post them in the chat, or you can open up a ticket with us if you have something a little bit more technical at help.mevo.com. And we will see you next time.